Hey, good morning. It is Thursday, September 3rd. Don't forget that I hope that was recording first. Blue light just came on. I don't know if I gave a introduction sentence there and you didn't hear it. I'm sorry. I didn't just start talking weirdly in the middle of a sentence. But anyway, if you've forgotten, make sure that there's a little purple Google form link attached in your Google Classroom every day. You need to fill that out for attendance. Some of you have just been sending me comments for the attendance question, which I'll count you as here, but I really want you to fill in the form A because that keeps your answers just between you and me, which is, most of the times don't matter, but whenever we're getting ready for a test and I'm asking you how you feel about the test or whatever, I don't want you to have to put I'm going to fail in front of everybody, or whatever. And also record your email addresses. So that way I can have an easy list of who is participating and who is not. Like I said, and the sentence that maybe got cut out is Thursday, September 3rd. So tomorrow is Friday. That pretty much is that way every week. But the point is tomorrow is the school day, even though the other people don't come to school. So for you, it's going to be pretty much normal. You'll need to check Google Classroom. We'll have tomorrow's readings. Chapter 2, Section 3, and the test practice questions attached as a link. You'll just have to fill them out there and hit, they're already shared with me because I'll make the document. You just have to fill out your answers on the Google Doc and turn it in. If that, there's no reason that shouldn't work. If you have any internet connected device, the easiest thing is to type it in that doc and it's already there. Those of you that are taking pictures and sharing with me, that's fine. I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying you're taking extra steps, because if you can open a Google Doc, you can do your work inside of that. Now, maybe you don't want to, you're printing and you don't want to type it up on an iPad or whatever, and that's understandable. So if you are in that situation and you want to keep sending me the pictures of your work, that's fine. But there's really no reason, unless it's just how you prefer, that you need to just not type it in the doc. When I assign those within classwork, I click the option to make a copy for each student. So when you open that, that's your copy, and it's already co-shared or co-owned by me. So I can just see what you've typed in there, what answers you've got. So that's the easiest and I think best way to do it. But like I said, all the other ways that I've told you could do it, I'm not telling you can't. I'm just saying that, if you don't want to take those extra steps, don't feel like you need to. So today we're talking, of course, as you can see, about Chapter 2, Section 2. Like I said, you read that yesterday. You should have filled out those questions. I've not checked those yet. So if you haven't, like I said, I'm not really checking those until we're ramping up for a test, which there are 5 sections in this chapter. So that'll actually be a while, probably a couple more weeks at least. So you've got a little bit of time to get those done if you haven't. And if once you submit it, it'll say to me, turned in late, but I'm not checking those. These are due for the students that are here the day of the test. So that's when they're due for you. I just am putting a deadline on there of the day of, just because you're supposed to be doing that social studies every day. And hopefully we'll keep you on schedule, because you don't want to have to do all 5 the day of. That's a bad use of your time. So I just want you to stay on top of those and get those done. And plus, it counts you as here if you're doing them, because if you're not participating, I got to count you absent. So with that said, I think what else we cover tomorrow? You'll have questions. The other students will have questions too. They'll have to do what you've been doing the whole time. They'll have online, and you'll have just it'll feel like a normal day for you, and I'll be here by myself. So today's attendance question that you need to fill in the form that is linked to this post in Google Classroom is: how many student desks is your guess? How many do I have in my classroom right now? What number? All you do is type a number: 15 desks, 150 desks, somewhere in between. It's somewhere in between. I'll give you that hint. Between 15 and 500. All you got to do is guess how many desks I have. And the winner will get nothing. I'll tell you, you win on the next video probably. But that's about it. I don't have any prizes to give out if I wanted to anyway. So we are obviously getting into the Civil War. When we left off, we had talked about a few battles but we haven't really gotten into it. Bull Run was the first major battle. It was near the town of Manassas Junction. The reason it's not called the Battle of Manassas Junction is because it's near a river named Bull Run. It wasn't in the town proper. It was actually in the yard of a guy named Wilmer McLean. Now, this is not in your book and it's not on your test, but it's one of those cool stories from history. But the punchline of the story doesn't come until section 5. So basically, I'm going to tell you just the first part of the story now. And then when we get into section 5 next week, or even maybe the next week, because you got Monday off, I'll tell you when we get to section 5, we will get to the end of the story of Wilmer McLean. But it's one of those weird coincidences from history. But Wilmer McLean was a guy who lived but near Manassas Junction, Virginia, and he was basically not his yard, but the field outside of his house, the property next to or adjacent to his house, was literally the battle site of the Battle of Bull Run. And so whenever he was, when I say it was in his yard, literally he had a meal interrupted by a cannonball crashing through his chimney and interrupted into his kitchen and ruining his meal, and dust and debris was flying around in his food or whatever. And so he was like, oh man, if this war is going to be fought right around here, I'm moving. And so he picked up his stuff and his wife and his family and he moved. And so that sounds like the world's least interesting and boring story. A guy was in a house near a battle site and the cannonball crashed into his house and he moved. But that's where we're going to end off today, because the end of the story, the punchline of the story, doesn't come until later. It has to do with where he moved and what happened then. But you'll have to wait for that. So that's a cliffhanger. So people didn't really understand the severity of the war. We talked about in section 1 that everybody's like, this war is just going to be over in a couple of years. And that was very, very, very much not the case, or a couple months, I should say, not years. It took 4 years plus. And in that vein, whenever, this is in Northern Virginia, right across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C., the Battle of Bull Run, and people of D.C. were like, well, let's go watch a battle. Let's just go sit on top of the hill and check it out like you're watching a baseball. Well, back in the day when we used to be able to go to baseball games. But anyway, baseball game or football game or sitting, in the bleachers Friday night for the high school football game or whatever, people are just like, they don't have PlayStations. They don't have, they're not running Warzone all night or whatever. They're not sending messages on Snapchat. And so they've got less to do for fun. And so they're like, hey, let's go watch this literal gang, war fight, and that's not even before we get into what happened. It's not a smart idea. If there were two gangs out there in the parking lot shooting guns at each other, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to go check that out. That's how people die in the movies all the time. There's a scary ghost in their house. And they're like, oh, let's go look, it's down in my basement, and they get eaten or whatever. And this is basically what happened to these Washington, D.C. people. They were sitting up on a hill. They were picnicking. The North was beating the South, and they're in D.C., so they're usually Union fans. And so then Stonewall Jackson shows up, and he turns the North back, and the North's running away. And the people watching, and they got the little binoculars on sticks, and they're like, oh, wow, the North's retreating. And then oh, wow, they're coming this way. And they're like, oh, my God, they're going to trample us. And people got trampled because the people that are running away from literal bullets are not going to be like, oh, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me. And so you had this big crowd of people, and then you had a literal stampede of humans running from being shot at that were and so this is really the very first battle of the war. We talked about the Battle of Fort Sumter, which is where the first shots were fired, and that's true. But literally 0 people died. There's an urban legend, and I have no idea if it's true or not, that a dog died there at Fort Sumter. And then you had, of course, the fighting with John Brown in Kansas, but that was not part of the actual Civil War. This is the actual first battle with troops on one side and troops on the other, and shooty. And so this really shattered the illusion that a lot of people had that oh, this is going to be simple and easy. People that were not even involved in the war got hurt. And this was really what in Mrs. Leffler's class, she would call foreshadowing. This is really foreshadows what's to come ahead. So the rebel, okay, so let's get this clear real quick. Rebel equals South equals Confederacy. Bad guys, slave owners. Okay, the people that are wanting to leave. Their nicknames are the rebels. They are the Confederacy. They're in the South. So any of those that you use to talk about that is fine. Yankees equals the United States equals the Union equals the North. Okay, so in the North you had the Yankees, the Union, the United States. In the South you had the rebels, the Confederacy, the the Rebels Confederacy. What am I forgetting? The South, I guess. So anyway, I was pointing my thumb for thumbs up, thumbs down, meaning North and South, but also thumbs up and thumbs down, meaning the Union was the good guys, us, and we don't have a lot of situations where we're very clearly the good guys. So we should really embrace that in Illinois and be like, hey, start flying Union battle flags, because we were in the Union, and the Union was on the right side of history, and the Union won. Spoiler alert. And so the Union is really just pushing the Confederacy, and Stonewall Jackson shows up and stops them, turns them back. And his name was Thomas Jackson, but he became known as Stonewall Jackson. When I say he became known as Stonewall Jackson, I mean on his graveside and stuff, it says Stonewall. It became one of those nicknames that is so much like a nickname that people thought of his real name. Like Tiger Woods, not really named Tiger. His name's Eldrick, which probably explains why he goes by Tiger. So anyway, like I said on the last slide, a lot of people realize this is more serious than we thought. In the West, the major Union goal was to control the Mississippi and its tributaries. Tributaries are smaller rivers that flow into larger rivers, like the Little Muddy flows into the Big Muddy, and then the Big Muddy flows into the, Ohio, I guess. And then the Ohio flows into the Mississippi. Okay, those are called tributaries. Tributaries can still be large rivers, but the idea is that they're not the end river. They're not the last final largest, which would be in most cases around here the Mississippi. Most of those will flow. Some rivers around here flow into the Ohio, and then the Ohio flows in the Mississippi. Those are tributaries. And so this is what we talked about last time, the Anaconda Plan, where they're going to surround, they're going to cut the Confederacy in two, and they're going to surround each side and squeeze in like a snake from the outside. I'm sorry, you're welcome for my hand puppetry here in the tiny little circle in the corner in the little Chromebook camera here. I know that's very descriptive for you and very helpful, but it's my first time doing this, so I'm sorry if that looks stupid, but whatever. So the goal of that is they got to control the river. Again, the Mississippi is and was, and unless something goes very wrong, will be our biggest and most important river. If there's a new river in your lifetime in America bigger than the Mississippi, something bad has happened. Like the earth has opened up and swallowed things whole in a giant earthquake, and there's a new mega river, and it's bad news. But anyway, Ulysses S. Grant captured Fort Henry, and they were like, hey, what will you give us if we give up? And he's like, if you don't, you got to quit the war and give up right now, or we're going to smash you into jelly, and I don't care. And so unconditional surrender became his nickname. U.S. is his initials. It kind of matched, even though technically Ulysses S. Grant, his middle name was actually just S. And actually, when he was born, his middle name was nothing. His name was just Ulysses Grant. But when he joined the Army, they spelled Ulysses with two S's and put the other S in the middle name column. And he was like, okay, that's my middle name now. My middle name's S. Instead of being like, no, it's actually not. He was just like, all right, I'll shut up and just let him change my name. So the Battle of Hampton Roads was basically the Merrimack and the Monitor, the Merrimack was confiscated by the South, the Confederacy. They renamed it the Virginia. So if you want to put Merrimack, if you want to put Virginia, either or. So you can put Merrimack versus Monitor. When I ask you this question, you can put Virginia versus Monitor. I usually just do M&M because it's easier for me to remember. But this is a big deal. People gathered again. They didn't learn the lessons for the first time. They gathered again on the beach to watch these ships fight, because this was the first time in history that two ironclad ships had fought. And so people were got there at sunup, 5, 6 in the morning, and were waiting for these boats because the word had got out that they were both sailing for Hampton, Virginia. And they circled each other, and people were like, oh my God, this is going to be incredible, metal boats. Can you believe it? It's to them, 1860, whatever, 2 or 3, they're like, this is like robots fighting, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe my head's. And so these boats circled each other for a while. Then finally, one of them opened up the cannons on the side, and people were like, oh, yeah. And they shot whole broadsides. You've seen the side of a boat with cannon fire. And then they just went ping, 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 and bounced off the boat. And they're like, oh, sick. And then the other boat, which the Monitor was much smaller than the Merrimack, they opened up theirs and they're like, oh, it's on now. And it shot it. Ping, 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 ping. And bounced off the water. And everybody's like, yeah, these boats are incredible. They're like giant fighting robots. Oh, my God. And then they did that again, like ping, 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 ping. And again, ping, 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 ping. And again, ping, 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 ping. For about 8 more hours. And finally, they're like, oh, this kind of sucks. You guys want to go and get dinner or whatever? And so it was very anticlimactic because it was like if I tried to take down somebody coming to fight and we threw like pebbles, like sand at each other, like one at a time, like one sand grain at a time. Like, yeah. And it'd be like, well, this is not really going to work. But it was, both circled each other and circled each other and circled each other. And finally, they're like, the captains look at each other like, yep, this isn't get done. And they sailed the other way to try to attack the wooden boats, which they could sink easily. The Battle of Shiloh was basically a surprise attack. The Confederates lost their plans, and basically Lee was going to split up his army and move them in different directions. And he's like, here's the plan, here's the plan, here's the plan, here's the plan. And he gave his plans to his generals, and his general put him in a literal cigar box. It was right on the horse. It fell out of the thing. And then 2 Union soldiers were like, hey, we're going to go off in the field. They were going to go poop, is if we want to be real. And they were like, hey, what's in this cigar box? Like, oh, the entire Confederate battle plan. And so the Battle of Shiloh turned into a big mess because basically the Union found out what the Confederate plans were and surprise attacked them. And then, it really saved our bacon, but it really flies in the face of what the book and everything says about like, oh, these brilliant Confederate leaders, like, well, they couldn't even keep their plans in their bags. But anyway, so we captured New Orleans. David Farragut, famously a Southerner who knew better. Again, we have this idea now that people like to push on the news, even that like, well, these people just didn't know better at the time. Well, he did. A lot of people did. And so we captured the entire Mississippi River, and the South can't get their cotton out, which is their whole plan. Because again, just like the grains of sand from a minute ago, you can't fight with cotton balls. You can't before you harvest them and before you go through them, they got thorns in them. But that's best case scenario. Is like, you scratched me, and that's about it. Most of the wars in the East, the Confederacy's doing pretty well, mostly because of Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. But they got greedy. If you remember back in Section 1, I said their plan was not to attack the North except for Washington, D.C., but they kept being like, well, let's just give it a shot. And every time they did, it didn't work. And so, they were going to attack Washington later on. They do, and it goes well, but they keep going away from their own plan that they devised. Like, we came up with a plan, you should be able, to be the one that follows it. And so he wanted to carry the war into the North and take the battle into the North and like really show him who's boss, which again, fighting a defensive war, we talked about this in Section 1, is much easier. All you have to do is not lose what you already have. And so this is the battle I'm talking about, Antietam, not Shiloh. I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier, where he split his battle, his plan, or split his troops, and they lost the orders. Okay, this led to the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. Single day battle of the Civil War. So not the Battle of Shiloh, that didn't happen, but this is when, that was just another bloody battle. But this is when they did the thing with the plans and the cigar box and the guys going to the bathroom found it and whatever. And so they were trying to attack the North, and they sent their 4 regiments in 4 different directions, and they were going to all circle around and meet together. And so 23,000 casualties in a single day. That's people that are killed on that day or wounded, and a lot of these people that are wounded don't last because medicine then, of course, is not what it is now. So that's the Battle of Antietam. Then, of course, the Emancipation Proclamation. The funny thing about the Emancipation Proclamation is that evil Supreme Court case, the Dred Scott decision that we talked about in Section 1, one of the really embarrassing moments in American history where our Supreme Court said that if you're black, you're literally not a person, you're a piece of property. It's embarrassing that was part of our, not just part of our country, but our actual, the Supreme Court handed that down. But anyway, Lincoln uses that against them. He's like, well, if you claim that anybody of color is property, the Constitution allows me to seize property in times of war. And so if people of color are property, then I'm taking your property and I'm freeing them. And so that's what the Emancipation Proclamation said. Now, this is one of the most important documents in American history, because it was symbolic that we are fighting against slavery now. And if you were an African American at this time in America, this was huge for you, even to this day, of course. It should be huge for all of us. But it really didn't do anything as far as practically, because in order to seize the property from the South, you got to win. Okay, and so this was very important, but only because we won the war. And so we've got to do that. So sections 3, 4, and 5, we'll get into what happened at home, more of the battles. I won't confuse Shiloh and Antietam again. Sorry about that again. So don't forget to put this is the last slide. Don't forget to put your attendance question guess into the Google form that I'm going to attach to this. We're 20 minutes in. I'm going to try sometime soon to get class to record this as I'm doing class, which would be longer for you. But that's okay. You won't have to watch it during class necessarily. It'll upload later. But that's, don't forget, you do have to copy these notes down. I'm collecting these. You have to write them down just like if you were here. That's the whole reason for this. Okay. Keep your mask on. If you go outside, keep washing your hands. I will see you. Well, I don't know. You'll see me, my floating head in the corner, on probably Monday. So everybody have a good day, and I will see you later. Bye.